There's a phrase we keep hearing right now in almost every AI conversation. I feel like I'm behind. And what's interesting is it's usually coming from people who are actually moving. They are the ones who are testing tools. They are using AI to some extent in their work, and they're even trying to stay current. And yet it still feels like something isn't quite clicking, like there's a gap that they can't quite name. Welcome to episode 122 of Instant Expertise Marketing Plus AI. I'm Yvette Brown, co-founder of X Promos. I became an entrepreneur at 23 when I started a promotions agency with my then 29-year-old business partner, Shari Nomady. Together, we've built campaigns for global brands, and today we're building decision confidence in the age of AI. We're doing that by keeping humans accountable, technology understandable, and outcomes measurable. So there's something deeper happening underneath that feeling of being behind. Because when you sit with people a little bit longer, you realize it's not really confusion, it's actually hesitation. It's that moment where someone says, I think this is right, but they don't fully trust it. And that is a very different problem that's not not understanding something.
Hello, and I'm Shari Nomady. Yvette and I rarely think alike, but we always come to the same conclusions and possibly even more now as it relates to AI. And what's showing up for me in those conversations is that people aren't actually tracking information. They've watched demos, they've read the post, and they've tried the tools. If anything, really, they've seen too much. And instead of feeling clearer, they actually feel less certain about what actually truly matters.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Shari, because if this was a knowledge problem, the solution would be simple, right? If this was just about knowledge, we'd be about learn more, try more, consume more. But that is not what's happening. People are doing all of that, and they're still not feeling grounded in their decisions. And that's the signal we're going to talk about today.
Right? It's like the more exposure they have, the wider the field gets. The more possibilities, the more use cases, more tools, and really no clear way to evaluate any of that, right?
Yeah, it's very much reminds me of our days of dealing with clients. And as you went through iterations, you were in the hourglass where instead of getting narrower, you were getting wider, right? And you knew,
So true.
oh, this is
So true.
bad. We are not going in the
Yeah.
right direction. So, we see that today. And part of that is really coming from how AI is being framed right now. Okay, stop me if you've heard this before. Most of what you're hearing about AI right now sounds like be more productive, move faster, automate more, do more with less. And while none of that is wrong, it is 100% incomplete.
And it's incomplete in a way that actually creates pressure. Because if AI is framed primarily as speed, then the natural question becomes, where do I fit that in?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, let's think about it. If the value is speed, then the human becomes the constraint. And once you start thinking like that, everything shifts. Okay? You start questioning your role. You start questioning your contribution, and you might start questioning your relevance.
And you see it in how people approach the tools. They're not asking, what does this help me understand better? They're asking, how do I do this faster?
Yeah, and that's where things start to break because AI, big spoiler alert, is not just about execution. It's about how decisions get made. So, let's make this a little more concrete. Think about a moment that's probably happened to you recently. You're in a meeting. Someone on your team shows you some AI generated output. Okay, it could be a draft, maybe it's analysis, maybe it's even a recommendation. And your first reaction is, this is pretty good.
And, pretty good is kind of a tricky place to be. We've been
No,
talking about this because it's not clearly wrong, and yet it's not clearly right either.
exactly. But nevertheless, you move forward because
Mhm.
nothing is obviously broken. Nothing's there to raise a red flag. But later, when you have to explain that decision, or maybe you have to defend it, you realize something. You didn't actually evaluate it, you just straight up accepted it.
And that's what's happening everywhere right now. And not because people aren't capable, but because they don't have a clear way to define what good actually means in this particular context.
And Shari, I think you nailed it right on the head. That is the gap. And it's why so many AI efforts feel inconsistent. It's not really that the tools didn't work, it's that the outputs don't always hold up. And over time, people start to lose trust. And that's especially when you are repeating those outputs over and over.
And it's not a dramatic failure. No one says this just doesn't work. It's really a lot quieter than that. And so they start double checking everything. They hesitate to share their outputs, and then they start relying on it less.
Yep. And when that happens, guess what? Everything starts slowing down. So, ironically, the thing that was supposed to create speed actually starts to create friction.
And that's because trust was never established in the first place.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Sherry. And this is why we need to reframe what AI actually is.
Mhm.
Because it feels like external intelligence, something that's outside of you, something you need to catch up to.
Something that's smarter than you.
Yeah, but guess what? That's not actually what's happening. Okay, again, quick focus here. AI is trained on human thinking, it's trained on human decisions, it's trained on human knowledge. It does not originate intelligence, it reorganizes it. And yeah, to be fair, it is excellent. It is amazing at organizing. It is also next level elite at pattern recognition and also personalization. But the OG intelligence inside that AI, it's not artificial, it is purely human. And once you see that, something shifts because that's the
Mhm.
moment that you realize you are not obsolete. You are actually the source material.
And that changes the question completely because now it's not, can AI replace me? But rather it's, what happens when my thinking is amplified? What if I could sharpen my thinking with human intelligence of my choosing?
And guess what? That's a different kind of responsibility because the thing is, and listen closely, amplification does not fix weak thinking, amplification exposes it.
Yeah, and it makes the difference more visible between guessing and knowing, reacting and deciding, and output and judgment.
Exactly. And really, that's where most people are at right now. They're using AI, but they're still evaluating it in the same way they always have, through instinct, through speed, through the like lens of is it good enough?
Yeah, and without a clear framework for what they are actually looking for.
Right. And without that, everything feels a little unstable
Mhm.
because you're moving, but it's like you're not fully trusting the direction you're going.
Which just brings us back to that original feeling of, I feel like I'm behind.
And you're not. You're just operating without a clear way of seeing where AI is actually creating value and where it's not.
So the default becomes move faster, produce more, keep up.
But guess what? Speed without clarity, it doesn't create confidence. It actually creates exposure.
And exposure shows up later when you have to explain the decision, defend the output, and stand behind the direction.
And guess what, folks? That is the real risk. It's not about using AI wrong. It's about making decisions that you can't defend later.
Which is really a very different kind of pressure than most people were expecting.
Yeah, and here's the thing, it's not going to go away because AI is not slowing down. If anything, it's actually accelerating the need to be clear.
So the question becomes not how do you use more tools, but actually how do you actually understand where the value is coming from?
And most people don't have a clear way to see that yet, which is why everything you do in the AI space feels fragmented. So, Shari and I have been working on a way to make that visible. This is not about more tools, not about noise. It's about a way of actually understanding where AI is creating value in your work, in your decisions, in your business. And we're going to talk about that more in the next episode.
Because once you can see it, everything else just starts to organize.
So that's pretty much it for today. If this resonated, please walk away feeling like you are not behind, but you're really just navigating something that hasn't been clearly mapped yet. And that's what we're here to change. Thank you for listening.